Welcome to Earth, a love story. I'm your host, Robin Lassiter. This time on the podcast, I talked to my very good friend, Samantha Brooks. Samantha and I talk about the dreamscape, tarot, and share some of our own dreams that have baffled us recently. The audio is a little weird on this podcast in spots. I did the best that I could, but we had some issues right away with the audio, which you'll hear as we enter into the conversation. Just grateful that we could get the damn things recording at all. So please forgive me for that. Also, I want to say and celebrate the fact that my book is out. Earth, a Love Story, the paper and ink and spine version of Earth, a Love Story is out in the world. You can buy it on Amazon as a paperback or Kindle. Thank you so very much if you've already done that. Many of you have. I'm really, really grateful. And if you have not bought the book, or if you don't want to buy the book, I've read the entire book on this podcast, starting with the very first episode. So episode 1 through 15, you can hear me read the book in its entirety. And that will be available probably through the end of the year. And then I'm going to record it again with the current version of the book for Audible. But the first 15 episodes of this podcast will always be available to patrons. Also, I was inspired to write something following this conversation. I was inspired to write a little piece about it, and you can find that on my website under Ephemera, which is where I store my short little writings, and also on Patreon, if you are interested at all. Here's my conversation with Samantha Brooks. Okay. Can you still hear me? You can?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Okay. For God's sake, I think we did it.
Good.
It's always an adventure.
Yes. And I read your request or your comments for this episode, and I kind of can remember and I kind of can't. So.
Yeah, it's all good. I was just... what I've been thinking a lot about, because it's come up with clients and it's come up with me, and it came up actually between us, are just about dreams and visions and sort of these archetypal things, and even the tarot, like all of these places that we go and experience these things that aren't just for us. It's kind of where I am with the realizations. It's like first, we sort of got aware of what we were thinking and what we were feeling. Like we just became conscious of like how we think and how we feel, and that we just weren't inside of that. And then it seems like the emotional body came online, and we had to feel feelings, and that's horrible and wonderful. And then the physical body coming online, like the actual, like, oh shit, I'm in a physical body. I have sensations, I have senses. There's an intelligence to the physical body. And now what I'm seeing and feeling is like, oh, other people have physical bodies. And now what does it mean to be in community and to share like those senses with other people? So, and a lot of it for me is happening in kind of the dream space or the liminal space in between waking and dreaming. I'm having a lot of contact with people there and in dreams. And dreams aren't just for one person. They're not just for like one individual, that actually the dreams and the things that come from these liminal spaces are for all of us. So that's what I've really been thinking about. And then the image that you sent me, that somebody drew and sent to you, and it was like meaningful for that person. It was meaningful for me, and it was meaningful for you, and kind of overlapped, but kind of in slightly different ways. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about lately. And it feels very mysterious and hard to get to, and kind of in the shadow. And I don't have a clear picture of it, but it's happening a lot.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I don't know where to start necessarily. Maybe the slightly comedic route be the best one to start with. Last night, I was ready to go to sleep. And I decided to speak out loud, whisper about today, and just say, like, if this thing is kind of about dreams that I'm going to do with Robin, well, can you just send me like a clear kind of productive dream or something that I can be anchored in? And so I whispered that so no one could hear me. And I was having pretty constant dreams of animals biting my hands. Like I told you that. It's like small animals. And sometimes I could feel it. And then sometimes it would really, really hurt a lot. And it was especially during my yoga training 8 years ago. I thought it was 3. But during those trainings, I would go to the main city near us and I would stay at my best friend's place where she would go to the training too. But I would go to like the local organic store and buy all the sugary things and like eat them before bed. It was my like monthly allowable. This is when food and I were, I don't know, still not on good terms. I feel like food was just using me as a body, and I was just using it to like make myself feel better.
Yeah.
So those dreams didn't know. I was like, what the hell? And then I was thinking, oh, is it because I'm just eating a lot of sugar? And that's just my way of telling myself like to stop. And then like these past 8 years, I've been diving deeper into even know how to, all the animistic things and just my relationship with the green world and the wider world. And so those animals took on a bit of a different meaning to me. And maybe I went the opposite way of like thinking it was just spirits, all spirits. And, so now, especially having that dream last night, for me, it's like both things can be true. Okay, maybe I had like a very sugary chocolate caramel filled bar and then popcorn. And so, yeah, maybe I was like a little bit pre-diabetic for a little bit with that dream. But then I also asked, so last night, I don't know, I was in this nightclub that I used to work at when I was young and free, but I had hope. And there was this black goat, like a little goat, and it was somebody's. And I think there was a joke entailed where it was hilarious that they didn't get the goat and I did. And I held it, but then it clamped onto my fingers like really hard and hurt so bad. But then it managed to get in my other hand somehow too. Anyway, like what? Then I woke up. What? Okay, I asked you for a literal, whoever you are. How does this pertain? What does this mean? So I don't know. I don't know where I am with that. But I guess I just have to take care of my body, And like what is that? How does that connect you and I? Like what does that mean? Yeah. So I guess I got what I asked for. And then I think about I just happened to do an underworld reading a couple days ago with somebody, and it was like 3 hours, very long, but we're like sitting across the screen together looking at these cards together, and it's very relational. And she actually, like a lot of the cards she brought up, the images, a lot of them she's had dreams about, like there was animals, there was just different things, and how some gave her comfort or some she just knew, okay, that's why this is here for me. And it's just interesting where, then I too kind of picked that up before I met her over the screen because I pulled the cards ahead of time. But it was the sense of, I've learned also that just because I don't know what a card, if I think it's quote unquote stupid or whatever, it doesn't mean it's for that person. I have to trust that. But I also had a feeling a lot of that reading was a lot of just confirmation through her dreams. So I found that interesting because I knew we were going to do this podcast. And I was just getting her ready to talk about all the grief because that seems to be constant. And then my friend also sending a drawing, and then there was snakes in the drawing. So I thought of you. So I asked you, and then I looked it up. I did a little research of just the image this person drew, and it was connected to an ancient deity. Also, when you say that this all seems a little bit not confusing, but you just said like it's just kind of underneath and you're not sure what we're talking about really, but it's there. I had the feeling also, I mean, dreams are a collective space, right? It is like we're dreaming with each other, with like all the beings, the earth, all of it. I think that too, like it's this freedom to connect just on this amygdala, the lower part of the brain, like everything's brain, whatever their brains are, that part is connecting instead of they're stupid. Yeah, I said it's stupid. Prefrontal cortex. What the shit does it know? Problem solving? What does that give you? Gives you anxiety, stress, ambivalence. You know, I think now that it's just bleeding into this part of reality, you know, like you've heard, right? That like people say, and I know the Aboriginals of Australia, well, I don't know, but reading about it, I mean, dreams are reality. That's the real world. And this is not, which can be also a very tricky situation, and not in regards to Indigenous people, but in regards to people who believe that this life doesn't count because they're going to a certain place if they're good and if they do everything exactly right. And that's where it counts. That's where suddenly their life starts. That makes sense to you?
Yeah. Or the belief that's getting more prevalent that this is, you know, a simulation or a video game. And that is tricky too, because to me, it's again a both and. The Matrix is still real. You know, it's not that it's not real. It's just that I think we're seeing through some veils to a different kind of reality, but it doesn't make it any less real. Like pain is still real, grief is still real. It's so funny or not that you brought up grief, because this dream thing is very present, but grief seems to be the underlying tone and mood for everything. So I'm always down for that, and we should talk about that too. But I wanted to say a couple of things. One, you eating like sugary things during yoga teacher training. I love that, because when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I was still me and my other and the other person. That there were two people actually, I think, just in our training, and she and I would do this really intensive training, and then we would go immediately and like smoke a cigarette together and be like, oh God, this is so hard. And then we would go out and drink and like party and dance and smoke more cigarettes, and then feel really, really guilty. And then we would try to manage it so that because we had to go back into training the next day for another like 6 or 8 hour block or whatever. And we would go, you know, we would like manage everything to make sure that we could be there again at 7 a.m. to do our teacher training, and try to get our shit together after the drinking and smoking. And it's a very small little town. And so everybody was watching us do this. And so there was a lot of that mixed up into it. It was pretty hilarious. And now I'm just restarted yoga, and I'm going to be teaching next week for the first time in like 4 years, and you're teaching again. And it's just funny how the spiral comes around to the same things, because it's very different. Like I'm approaching it in a very, very different way. I'm in a very different place. And that was fine too. Drinking and smoking was fine too, but it was exhausting. It was like indicative of a lot of resistance around kind of going all in. and I still have resistance, but it's less. So the other thing, as you were talking, the animal bites, and I think it's so perfect and hilarious that you asked what I call the dreamer, and thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for like taking this podcast seriously enough to think about as you go to sleep, and to ask the dreamer for a very clear message. And the dreamer's like, how about more animals biting your hands and it hurts like shit?
Yeah, like, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarity. Yeah.
The clarity of like, my dreams are now back in the place I grew up in, like people that I don't even kind of think about. I want something profound.
Yeah.
I want to see cool. Like all of it. Okay.
I think animal biting you dreams are, I personally think they're pretty profound. When you told me about that, these snakes biting your hands, I went through a period of that in my life where snakes were biting me. And it was not a great period. There weren't, like, I was struggling with some things, like with some pretty big things. And I think if I had to pin it down, I would say that it was, that it was something was definitely trying to get my attention. And snakes have so much symbolism about transformation, about needing to shed old skins, about like health even. And what else do snakes mean to me? Very much about like sexuality and the feminine as well. And the last thing I'll say before I am quiet and let you speak again is that it's just one of the many things that we've lost is as a culture is the dream sharing thing. And I do think it's for all of us.
It is. And what a great way to make somebody uncomfortable is tell them you had a dream about them when you hardly know them. Also,
yeah.
It's a great intro to awkwardness.
Yeah.
I do it quite often.
I do too. I'm horrible. Yeah. I'm like, send people a text. Oh my God, I had a dream about you last night. They're like, don't tell me.
No, I'll tell you because actually it's all that matters. For a long time, this idea of delving into quote unquote magic, and some people would say witchcraft. I don't know how I feel about that word, but esoteric cards and spirits and beings of the land, all of it. And for, I was like, I just want those dreams that I know it's that thing, that being or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then thinking about these patterns of these animal dreams where I just thought they were, like, oh, too much sugar, or, oh, I don't want to, like, what am I, a freaking Disney princess? Like, that's not what I don't want that. That's not good enough for me. But if I think back to deciding, both my partner and I both decided to have a second kid, I remember having a dream. So I found out I was pregnant. No, I didn't. Sorry. Everybody's going back with me, so I will change my mind. We decided. And then I had a dream of this chicken coop, big old chicken coop, and I went inside of it, and there was all of these eggs broken open. Some were just yolks, some were live chicks, some were dead. There's so many. Whatever. I was like, oh, that was weird. And then we went on our first getaway together. Our child, our only child at the time, was 4 or 5. And we went to Vancouver Island. And we stayed at this bed and breakfast, and we went on a hike the next day, a little walk. And that was the morning I found out I was pregnant, or the night before on the trip, which then I just didn't feel good. And it didn't take long to get pregnant. So it was kind of a joy kill for somebody else in the relationship. So we came upon a clearing, and we saw a sign that it was like the first homestead, one of the first homesteads on that island. So it was like old rundown house. And I looked and there was that chicken coop. I swear it was the same one. And then I looked on the sign and it explained who the people were. And prior to this, I remember seeing, and it was actually interesting, this person lived on Vancouver Island a long time ago too, an older woman. It was a gardening show and her name happened to be Lotus. And I really loved that name. And I had never heard of that name before. And I looked it up and it's like like an old British, now I just think it's like colonial name, like it's actually quite old. So I looked at this sign and read that, lo and behold, the woman's name was Lotus that had settled there. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, this baby will be born female, I'm quite sure, and her name will be Lotus. And that happened. And then I think about all the animal dreams that I have. And then I think about how I have chickens and I have all these dogs. And I actually have a lot of stuffed animals, like not like childhood, but replica stuffed animals that live around here. Like I have a mole, crow, and a chicken. So all of these, they reflect who I am and then maybe what is in relationship with me also that I just thought was not spectacular enough, but actually it's because that's not what we're talking about. These things aren't necessarily spectacular. They're just like any other thing we're in a relationship with. They're part of us. Maybe that's why this relevance of this dream is to like take it more serious or take these dreams of mine more serious. That maybe the animals don't like it when I eat a lot of sugar. I don't know. But those dreams actually, after the yoga training, and they went away after a while, but they changed where it ended up the animals would just, they were biting me pretty hard. And then they would just nibble and then they were just running alongside me. And I remember one dream a fox was just tugging at my shoelaces, really tugging. And then I had a dream about a snake that was going into my mouth and then all the way down into my like body. And then I woke up not being able to breathe, and that was intense, but it never scared me. Like I love those. I was like, yeah, for that. And then back to the tarot reading, and like I think it's just in relationship. Our dreams are with each other, like you said, this matrix thing, and how whatever we're in now is kind of this. Even people saying, it's like a game. And I still think that's very influenced by this idea of like heaven and hell and how the afterlife is the one that counts. Like capitalistic game, that's the thing that's not real. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we're like completely disassociated from reality, meaning dreams and the whispers of the green world and the animals and our own bodies. We're just in the reality of being good enough and smart enough and have enough money and be young enough and attractive enough. That's the matrix.
You said so much, and
I do.
I know.
Call it annoying, like my teenagers.
We're disassociating more and more from the natural world, and it's making it meaningless when in fact we are constructed, or we come into this world in a way that it is highly meaningful to be in like relationship with the natural world. It's who we are, and it matters so much. I believe that we incarnate here. I believe in souls. I believe that things happen beyond this physical reality. I think it makes our lives on earth more important. Like, why do we come here? Why do we come here if it's not to have, if there's not something that happens here that can't happen anywhere else? And that is being in form in a physical body. And then like, how does the dream world fit into that? Because the dream world seems, probably because of our cultural conditioning, seems less real, right? Like we give it less real, we give it less space, we give the liminal less reality. There's a shift though that happens. It happened with me where I stopped centering rational waking life as the only reality or as a truer reality or a better reality. It's like, actually, we have access to all of these other places and they're part of being human. They're not part of the dissociation, actually. They're not. And like, I have to always say, like, no shade on dissociation. It's a super helpful thing that we do and it's necessary. And I do it every day and it's perfectly fine. I think taking like the liminal spaces and the dream worlds and stuff like that seriously actually make us more human, not less. Like it makes the world more real.
This might not make sense, but I'm trying to make sense of the nonsensical. There's this card, I believe it's called Stargazers, that it came up and it was just like this idea of like the beings that are the stars. So planets and stars are very like interested in relationship. And I was kind of like, for the longest time, I didn't care about stars, space, anything. Like I really was focused on Earth, the Earth underneath the Earth. And then slowly it started kind of like just getting more and more interested in astrology and learning and listening. And then it went to like ancient astrology, learning, listening, thinking, and then discovering stars, which is a whole ancient thing also. And then thinking, oh, that's funny, have that card. And then, like, okay, I want to figure out what stars are with me, or were with me on the day I was born, and then where they are. And the ancients, whoever they are, there's lots of them, believe that like the stars are actually the most powerful beings. But that did really make me think about these stars and how we related to them over the thousands of years. Like I have just been busy my whole life just trying to make sure that I was okay. And now I've just started realizing, oh, my okayness it really rests on the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the things I can't see and the idea of relationship. And then now it's like, oh my God, do I have enough capacity to look up and also understand that there's beings there that are like my okayness has to do with them and vice versa, maybe. And maybe that's why it's like not an intellectual understanding. I think a lot of this is just starting, well, I can only speak for myself, like unpacking. And that's why I think like grief is underlying everything too. It's just the realization upon realization every day of how much we've missed or didn't know or didn't know about, wish we could, all of it. And then also think that grief is just centered on like we've replaced relationship, which should just be good enough, with having to know everything, why and how, instead of resting in like in relationship. And we don't have to know, we just have to trust in the relationship.
Yeah. When you're talking about like your okayness being used to kind of be a singular thing that had just to do with you, and now it has to do with the people around you and relationship and relationality, but not just not just with people, but with animals, with the forest, with everything around me. And I can feel myself more and more situated in this web. And it's like if one little strand is touched, we all feel the reverberation of it. And I'm starting to have that as an experiential reality. And it is overwhelming. It's like, do I have the capacity for this? I have so much more capacity than I did because I I mean, that's a whole nother topic about like trauma and, what we have capacity for. Because when I was in a place where my nervous system was just shot, I had no capacity to feel any of this. But now that I've done so much healing there, I do have capacity for that relationality. And it's so interesting because I know you're deeply an earth based being. Like you're interested in what's under the ground and earth, elementals and earth spirits and things like that. And I have always felt associated with something else, with something that came from elsewhere. And you now are kind of looking up to the stars and starting to be in contact with that. And I've spent the last probably year or so looking down, maybe even longer, maybe like 2 or 3 years, like starting to get rooted here. And it's all human. And there's so much mystery and there's so much in the unseen. Even the dream space is relational. Like it is relational. It is not for me to extract some tool from that I can like use to become all the things we were talking about before, like better and smarter and more productive and all of those things. It's just not that. It doesn't speak that language at all. And it's not interested in that space. So, and also like, I love Jungian dream analysis. Like I know it's all, and I use those tools all the time. And I was talking to a friend who was like, yeah, I have somebody who's into dreams and they like become the different aspects of the dream. And she was saying, I don't fucking get that at all. I don't know what people are talking about. And I understand why she says that. And also, I've done that in working with some of my dreams. The way that I have been in relationship with really like intense, profound dreams lately has been, I appreciate their mystery. And I appreciate that it's like, should necessarily take a little bit of chewing on. It's a tiny little bit of ontological shock, right? It's like, it doesn't fit anywhere. It doesn't make really any sense. It kind of changes reality a little bit. If you engage with it, it necessarily causes some rearrangement of reality and some newness, some novelty, which is like, thank fucking God, because yeah, it gets pretty horrible without novelty, without like real novelty, something that's so unexpected, and dreams can bring that. And so my orientation with stuff like that is that I kind of wrestle with it in a good way, or you work with it until it becomes something different, until it becomes something that's precious. And the other thing, here's my framework for dreams that I'm just realizing that I actually do have. I think that there are lots of different kinds. One of them is they're just in the psyche, right? Like this is part of our psyche. And the psyche is beautiful and mysterious and contains all of these hidden aspects and all of these teachings. And I deeply respect the psyche. I think that it informs us in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. And so when it reveals something to us, and if it's from the psyche, then every part of the dream is part of us, right? Like every aspect of the dream, including the landscape, including, wherever it takes place, whoever is there, whatever else is going on. So I think that's one kind of dream. I think there are like transpersonal dreams where we have contact with other beings, where there really are other entities, which ultimately, yes, we're in relationship with. And so they're part of us in some way as well, but they're more distinct from us. And so there's these like transpersonal dreams. And then I do think that we travel to the astral, we travel to these other places in our sleep. And sometimes we remember, or sometimes we have like full blown out of body stuff and go places and we remember that whole process. And sometimes we don't, but I think we go there a lot. So in that context, if the animal biting dreams are from the psyche, then taking the form of the animal and trying to see it through their eyes I've done that for me. And that's been really helpful. And it's making me want to tell the story of a lucid dream that I had, but I'm going to pause because otherwise I'll just talk for 30 minutes. But yeah. then I'll tell maybe a lucid dream story. And I want to tell you this story, this dream that I had the same night that I dreamed about you. That was so fucking disturbing. And it stayed with me for like half the day and was really distressing and confusing. So that's always fun.
Okay, well, I don't know. It just makes me think like doing these tarot readings with people, especially it is easier over a screen, actually. But how I keep reminding people it's like not a to-do list what we're doing. It's not something that it's up to them and they have to do it all and accomplish it all and somehow, then it'll make them better. Because we're like I tell them, we're not doing this alone and we are not alone. And it is in constant relationship, and the things that are the images and the things we talk about, we're talking about how things just work and weave underneath. And I think we're remembering what it was like to not search meaning and information because the relationship provided all of it. I don't know how we became so separate. And part of that is religion was a vessel for that. The Industrial Revolution, colonialism, like all of it. There's something there, right? But I don't know. I also think I only know my own life and my own experience. And I know in some way the things that I experience in my everyday then mirror like the wider experience of people, of non-human people, all of it, where I know in my life sometimes I had to like be completely devoid of the things that like childhood, the things that I loved doing, to then come back to them. So there must not that there's like necessarily a purpose in a way like we think there is, but we're remembering, and the grief comes first of all the things that we've lost and that we could have had and that people are losing and all of it. Because imagine just to be able to rest within relationship. That's what children need. Small children, but we all need is the ability if children can be at rest in relationship with their caregivers, meaning if they don't have to work for attachment, like they don't have to they have to be good, or they think they have to be a certain way. When children are at rest, or when we are at rest, that means then we play. And that's where learning comes and development. So I think that's what's happening, and that's all my like education with developmental psychology. But also the like then sitting in a room with parents and watching children and then truly understanding, oh my God, okay, this is what life is. This is what like the wider experience. It's all relationship, and we all need each other. And maybe that's what's happening in the wider world. And that, I mean, all traumatized because we have been separated from right relationship. I mean, to me too, it's like people who, who are believing in a God who grants them peace after they die, or whatever their beliefs. It's because it's too much to bear to face the reality of what the world is or what their world is, and there's no shame. It's the exact same. I feel like a person who needs to get high in order to survive, because the shame and the grief is too much to bear. So it makes sense that the first wave of this is, well, like you talked about, like being aware of your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and that's when you become aware of the pain after that. And that's why, for me, like that, talking about this stuff brings me more joy now than, and sitting with pain, which is important. But we could talk forever about the pain and the grief of like what life is. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, with pain and grief, there's joy and ecstasy. in equal measure and not in these big felt things, just like I wanted those big dreams. It's in the just everyday experience of being able to like accept grief and let it move through you. And then when something actually is funny or it feels good or you never noticed that, and then I think it's all relevant to this of just this experience of now we're feeling what it is to live. And because this Western world is starting to feel like, and I mean this in a very light, like bigger lens than like, please, because I don't mean it literally in a sense, but we're feeling what it feels like to a lot of people around the world are in, not at the norm. It felt like for a long time. Reality.
Yeah.
We're losing our safety features, I guess, or the, money, food. Yeah. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. All of it. Yeah. Yeah. First of all, just to that last point, like there's part of me that likes to forget and there's part of me that likes to presence in the moment where I'm super safe. Like right now, I'm presenced in this moment where I'm just like super, super fucking safe. And then I move to the broader picture of getting glimpses of what's going on in the world. And it's absolutely terrifying. Like there's so many structures that are falling apart. Things are destabilizing, and they have been, it's just sort of happening under the surface for me. Cause I have food and I have this amount of safety. So I still am at a place where I can just look at it from a distance, but it's like it's coming daily now. These reminders that it's just like, all right, this shit's getting crazy and something's got to give at some point. And, it makes me think about, I don't know, it's hard to talk about this, but people, myself included, who have felt from a very young age, like the beings that visited me showed me pictures of devastation and destruction and told me to do something about it when I was like 4, and it was constant. And so I've always felt this impending, this urgency and this impending doom, and something is coming and what am I going to do about it? And I've learned to live with that. And we all on many levels have learned to live with that because we can feel the wrongness. I'm like, I don't want to negate all of the tremendous beauty in the world because it absolutely exists, but we can all feel it. Like, I don't even need to qualify it. Like we can all feel it. So, living with that, deciding what to do with it, and what you're talking about in terms of how people deal with it. I also have, I get it. I get that people are terrified. I get that people, here in this country are like arming themselves to the teeth. I get that. I get the idea of being like, this world isn't real. This isn't the real place. The next life matters. Because as you said, facing it, facing how, we basically live on this paradise planet and it's just a giant shit show of unsafety and false systems that have been put in place, and not really, I mean, sometimes maliciously and sometimes like overtly nefariously and sometimes cruelly, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it is just like, we thought this would work better, so we tried this. That's just part of what humans do, I think. We just create stuff that we think is cool and then we go, oh shit, Go ahead. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, it's just like, to me, it's more like, it's the cruelness of like, I don't know, like the cruelness of the person that doesn't know what's cruel because they've never had to experience hardship and stuff, it's just that the cruelty of ignorance, my friend, can be like,
That's it. I mean, I think that that's all of it, is that it's I call it unconsciousness. Like I was shitty. I was shitty in relationships. I was bad to people. I did stupid, bad things when I was less conscious of how, and like traumatized.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just trying to get needs met, just trying to find safety and going about it in unskillful ways. And it didn't excuse what I did. Like, I definitely hurt people and it wasn't okay. And also, I have a ton of compassion for that person who was just fucking scrambling and unsafe and terrified and, all of that. So, you talking about like children just wanting to rest in the safety of
attachment, basically.
Like secure attachment, the safety of relationship without having to earn it or do something in particular, and then that leads to rest, which leads to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt, as you were saying that, talking about grief, like I feel the grief of that, and my life's pretty good. Like, I'm doing pretty great, but it is still really hard for me to access play and rest, and I have to work really hard at it. And I don't have a lot of things stacked against me other than, just the conditioning and the, life circumstances that we all deal with. So that gives me a tremendous amount of grief because I don't know a lot of people right now who are playing. And then when you do come across a person like that, I want to do that, like that, just lightness. And so when I started really getting the call to joy, which I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about, joy? Like, how can, and I've been seeing this.
Joy is a woman in her 60s and she has short hair and she shops discount. That's joy. What are you talking about? I know joy. Sorry if there's any joys. I'm joking.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's it. It's like, and I've been seeing this meme going around that's something like, we're not healing to cope with trauma. We've been coping with trauma. We're healing to develop the capacity to cope with joy. And that has been, it's like, yeah, that's been my experience. Like, it's one thing to sort of accept and become able to move through grief and become able to feel all of the huge, big feelings that are so overwhelming and sort of just accept that this is what's happening and not try to construct a narrative that gives us a way out, like, oh, this place isn't really real, so it doesn't really matter, or the ETs are going to come save us and fix everything, or whatever,
or it's up to me to change everything.
Right.
No, it's just up to us to like just sit there and just be with the futility of the truth, I guess.
Right. As a first, and then that's it. Yeah. It's like such a necessary part of, I mean, that was my last little mini like Patreon podcast episode, was talking about I said it exactly. I said that, like, this is the hill I will die on, is that we have to, before we can have the ability to kind of look around and see how to do things differently, we have to go through the gateway of grief. Like, it's just part of it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. But and it sucks.
It sucks. But then I also say, and with joy, and I'm saying this without trying to sound condescending or like I do it or know it or anything. It's not that, but it's my like low understanding that these things are meant with like relationship with others, with like the things around us. It's simple. It rests in simplicity and mundaneness and like, oh no, that's not it, because it's supposed to be whatever. Like my dreams, they're supposed to be like riveting and powerful, but those like the opportunities to like reach for joy or grief or whatever are like, it's the simple things. Really, it's like freaking finding a packet of Jelly Bellies, which I know I shouldn't be eating every night, and I have to quit because my back got weird after in the morning. It's like, what? You guys, I sound like I just eat it right a lot. But no, it's in the joy of like what's in front of us. It's not something we have to do and create for ourselves. It's just accepting that it's like it's there around us again in relationship, and that we don't have to do these things alone. And it'll just take a while to like realize that everything we need, and of course, I'm saying spiritually, but I don't want to say spiritually, but within that like, context of like somebody laughing and you can't help but laugh, or that bird that you have never seen before in real life, or like me, didn't know that woodchucks existed around here and didn't know they were fat and scrambled up trees and tried to like hang on to a branch with their front paws. They're so fat that they are almost slipping out of the tree. Anyway, and just being alone in the forest and laughing really hard. This fat, chunky, toothed woodchuck that's not supposed to be hung up in a tree. Anyway, it's that. That's what makes us slowly be able to handle death.
Right. That's right. Exactly.
Daily basis, which is also apparent to me more and more, which used to be a huge fear of like my own death and like dying and blah, blah, blah. And now, and disclaimer alert, or, like talk about dying for a second. But now it's like being able to go, okay, death, like as like some sort of release and rest, which is the other end of the spectrum.
As you were talking about that, about the simplicity, what it reminded me of is how joy has come to me, which absolutely is in the moment, it arrives, and it's just whether I happen to be in a place where I can experience it. But it's kind of all around, like the sensation of being alive, or as Joseph Campbell, I just read this quote from him, the rapture of being alive, like remembering the rapture of being alive is bananas. And I think that that's part of the like capacity building too, is just to remember like, holy shit, like I can feel the air on my skin. I'm always like, the blue sky will always bring me right there. Cause it's so like, it could be any color, you know what I mean? Like it could be, yellow or shit brown or something, or it could be any color. And I'm sure we'd be like, oh yeah, it's a beautiful sky, but blue, like this bright blue, gorgeous, weird sky that we get to experience, that I like through my body get to experience the sky, get to experience like smells and my feet on the ground and the movement of air around me. Just that is what has been bringing me into this kind of like rapture, which feels like joy. Yeah. And it is extremely simple. And it's like part of the emotional body coming online, part of the physical body coming online, part of choosing to be connected to the earth. And I don't even think, I'm just not convinced everybody's going to end up doing the same thing. And I think that's perfectly fine. Like there's a bunch of people who are like going to really want to have their consciousness uploaded into a computer or a robot or something. And cool for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I choose for me to make sense of that as I would anybody who obviously needs to do their own thing. And I just think it's hard not to like, I don't want to sound like not even judgy, but like, I don't know, but this is how I can make sense of it. I'm choosing to think that's just people like, it's just not like, again, it's just too much to bear. Like I can't worry like that. I can't. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what you all weirdos are thinking, but I am not doing that because that doesn't feel right.
Right.
And then there are teenage girls, which none of what we said applies, especially like female presenting teenage girls. It's all about them. It's only about them. Right. The world is them or revolt. So some people decide they're the enemy and some will not. They rule the world. It's their emotions. It's like they said it was like they were the cause of poltergeist activity. This is what the world is burning because we need to do better for our teenage girls.
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm just trying to make jokes.
It's good. Because it's actually also like one of my teachers talks about, and you would know this too, because you do developmental stuff. Like it's a developmental thing, right? As a teenager to just, you're right about everything. And
You have to be.
you have
Yeah.
to be, right? And so maybe that's just the developmental stage that we're at as a species. Is like a lot of people, yeah, I don't know. It also sounds kind of judgy and hierarchical to say that. But when I realized that, I was like, oh, yeah, I've been at the teenage phase of development for a really fucking long time. And it actually wasn't until I quit drinking and then got through the first like 3 years of sobriety that I started, because I started drinking when I was a teenager. So a lot of my development kind of stopped there. And it wasn't until I got sober and started moving through it, then I was like, oh, there's something else here.
It makes sense to me. I mean, that was, I think 12, 13. That's when my mom really, like, her painting, her art career took off. So she became full-time artist, which, I mean, then that's like stress,
Mm-hmm.
like hardly there in some ways. Then my father was getting really, really sick, but then that was the time where like you know, just then like I had this body, and I thought that like my appearance, everything is what mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just got lost in the world of pleasing and living for appraisal and approval. And I can honestly say, in all humbleness, I mean, that's my wake up. Well, too, definitely the last year, for the last 3 or 4 years of like realizing where I was emotionally in a lot of ways with that young girl. But I think also it's because now I'm finally feeling safe enough in myself, in my own body, like safe enough literally within myself. So I guess if that's, I'm probably not doing that alone in a way, but that's really where the autonomy that I have is to really choose to do that. And now, because it's all about safety too, then I can like, okay, now I feel safe enough where I can truly like put there is more before myself. And of course, I mean, we could talk a lot about too how we like the sacrifice of self for others. I'm talking about actually like consciously without like the fear or whatever to be able to do that without any fear either or. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. That's my experience moving through this is as I became safe for myself, then I became safe for other people. And that's what that is. Exactly. It's like I'm resourced enough. I'm not either terrified and pushing away or terrified and like clinging to draw somebody, like trying to get my needs met so much by the outside that they become not people. They just become sort of representations of who I want them to be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's for sure. That's the same. So now it's like, I can be kinder because I have choice, basically, because I'm freed from, my body is freed from my nervous system thinking it's the past, from my nervous system being like, fucking, it's dangerous. Yeah, it's not safe. Right. So as more safety came in, it's like, well, now I can actually choose. I have more, I think that's what all of it is, capacity and all of that stuff. So yeah. Oh my God.
I know. We should get paid for this. I mean, that was like
I know.
month worth of work right there.
No, it's true. Yeah. I was with my friend Priya in a coffee shop in Alamosa, Colorado, and we were both working. So we were both on our computers working. But we were kind of listening to the conversations in the room. And this whole coffee shop was just full of women, and they were just fucking working it out. They were like talking about all of it, oh God, just like the processing that was going on between all of these women in the coffee shop. We both just stopped and looked at each other, and we had tears in our eyes, and we were just like, holy shit, like all these women are holding it down. And there was one man in there, and he was a Buddhist monk, and he was in the robes and everything. And it was just like, he's fucking holding it down too.
Like, I come here to meditate. This is my vibe. It's drinking my coffee. That's really funny, actually.
It was really beautiful. So I think I want to share. Go ahead. What's
There's
up?
beauty. Please. I said, yes, there is beauty.
There is beauty. There is.
Share. I want to hear.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna maybe I'm gonna save the lucid dream for a lucid dream thing because it takes it down a whole nother rabbit hole. And I know that we can't just sit around and talk for 17 hours. Darn. Unfortunately, I know. So what I'll share is this other dream that I had the same night that I dreamed about you. And I'm still chewing on it. And it's just so fascinating to me. It's just such a weird ass dream. So I dreamed that I was reading a book written by one of my teachers. And if people are listening and know me personally, they know I have like 2 teachers. So if you think it's one, it's the other one.
Not that
like,
one.
Yeah. But it's a very kind of personal dream if you know me and you know who those people are. So I was reading this book from one of my teachers, and in the book, do you know the TV show and the books, Outlander? Have you heard of those at all?
I've heard of them. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I just
That's about
like sex and history or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I don't watch it. It sounds great, but I don't, and I don't really know much about it. But at some point in my life, I think I read one like 20 years ago, and I just remembered the name of the main male character, which is Jamie. Just bizarre that I know that, but I knew it in my dream.
That's so weird.
I know, it's very weird. And so in the book that I was reading from one of my teachers, she cut her attachment to him out of her body with a knife. So that's what happened in the book that I was reading. And I was reading it and I was like, I should do that. And so in the dream, this is really intense. Yeah, so like, just buckle up like, a little bit. Yeah. Like,
or whatever.
Yeah. Like it really is. It is actually quite intense. So yes. Disclaimer for what's upcoming, because it's kind of gruesome. But I took a knife and I cut from like right below my left collarbone down my body, kind of around like my left breast, all the way down to my, like the top of my pelvis, top of my pelvic bone, and then went over to the outside and then went all the way back up to kind of my shoulder and then joined it. So I had cut this huge like strip of skin, and it cut deep. But in the dream, I was like, oh, it's interesting. It doesn't hurt at all. Like it's so strange that this doesn't hurt, because it was one of those dreams that was just so fucking real. It was so vivid. I was sure that it was reality. So I finished doing it, and then I kind of looked at this strip of tissue of skin that I had cut, and I realized like, oh fuck, I cut deep and it's gonna fall off, and it's exposing like bone and muscle, and like I've done something really bad. I did something really dangerous, and now I'm in trouble. I need stitches. Like I need this to be repaired. So I went to my family, my mom and my sister and my dad, and I said, I've done this thing and I shouldn't have done it, but I need help now. And so I said, I need to go to a hospital, but they're going to commit me. They're going to think that I'm absolutely crazy because to see that I've done this to myself. And I'm so terrified to go to the hospital, and because I knew I would be put away. I knew that they would take me to a psych ward, and that was just what was going to happen. But I felt like I had no choice. So I went into the hospital, and this nurse came in, and she was like getting me hooked up to machines and asking me all these questions. And she was like, why are you here? And I was so terrified, but I said, I was like, couldn't catch my breath. And I was like this. And I said, I've cut myself and I need stitches. And she said, yeah, I see that you've done that. So we're going to get that taken care of. And also the psychiatrist is on their way. And I was in this like stark, horrible linoleum on the floor, fluorescent lights on the ceiling, like white walls, hospital room. Then I was kind of like looking at the cut, and it was sort of healing, except for in one part at the top. And I thought, fuck, maybe I didn't even need to come here and do this and tell anybody that I'd done this. Maybe I'd made a mistake even by coming here. So I woke up from that dream and I was just it was so disturbing and I was so terrified to be put away. And I woke up with all that emotion and that terror. And it took me several hours to stop feeling that feeling. And I kept like touching my body where I had cut that. So that's the dream that I wanted to share with you. And so the way that I've made the kind of framework that I've put around it is a couple of things. One could be maybe I do need to cut. How do I talk about this super fucking personal shit on this podcast?
It's only you and I. What are you talking
I know
about?
yeah, that's right. Nobody's listening to this anyway.
No.
So maybe I did need to cut out sort of this idealized masculine, that's in my body that I still think maybe is going to complete me or rescue me or something like that. So that could be a way to work with this dream. Or, I mean, it could also be cutting out, again, sort of the patriarchy or this idea of, this kind of false idea of what the masculine is and all of that, and cutting that out of my body. And then knowing that if I do that, fearing that if I do that, I'll be seen as insane by the world. Like it won't be okay for me that I did that. Or that it was perfectly fine that I did that, but I got scared and went to the hospital to get help when I shouldn't have, and it just would have healed up on its own. And there could be so many different like ways to look at it, but yeah, that one has stuck with me. And that's one that I will continue to like chew on and work with because I have no fucking idea, but it was wild.
What night was that?
It was Saturday night. So first I dreamed of you. I had this whole dream of you where it was a bunch of stuff happened, but we shrunk down. You and I like shrunk down really small and like slipped through the atoms into a different reality to kind of like escape uncomfortable like bullshit that we didn't want to deal with. And that was super cool and fun. But there was a lot of stuff around it. It was like family and kids and things that we were like working out and trying to figure out. And then we just bounced by shrinking down and kind of slipping away from that reality and going and doing something else. So
cool. It's also interesting because I recently had a reading where in one of the, I call them columns, but one of them, it was an act of like giving something over, but it was one card it's just the divine masculine on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other card was tarot card, the King of Pentacles. And this is recently, like around that time. And we were kind of like, oh, what is that? Like, is that like, yeah, like somebody who's so comfortable or rested in or feels like it's like the right thing there. We were trying to figure it out too, like, okay, relationship with masculine, or is that kind of like, is that over? How do you have to give that over? That kind of thing. Very interesting though, in a way that it was like around the same time. And then I also thinking about that, and then just you talking about that book turned TV series too, the ancestral connection to that, and especially too because that also came up in the reading in a way of like seeming crazy for the things that person knows they can do or whatever. And then my question to you was like, did you see yourself cutting, or did you from your own eyes like looking down?
It was from my own eyes looking down. Yeah, I was like in my body doing it, and I had this knife and I had it like pressed up against my thumb so that it was about half an inch away from my thumb, and I just put it on my body and cut. Yeah.
And then your recent experience with a hospital and all of that, and like how that connects, and just like the emotions too, and like even the act of cutting into the body. Was that heart side or not heart side?
It was heart side, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then like that, like if we're thinking in a kind of like a magical thinking arena of like accessing emotions and like taking them out too, getting rid of them or bringing them to the surface, and then having that whole visceral emotional experience after too.
As you're saying that, what comes up is two things. One, I mean, I haven't watched the TV series, or it's been so long since I've read the book, but for whatever reason, what I feel like is that that character is indicative of an idealized masculine. Yeah, thank you, please. I would like that kind of person. And so bringing up emotions around that, because I'm still like relationship, the idea of a romantic relationship is pretty fraught for me, just because of everything. Like it's not it's still, I'm still dealing with a lot in regards to that. And so that makes sense. And then also talking about, we could do a whole thing on our way of knowing. And it could be a feminine way of knowing, or it could be like an animist way of knowing, or it could be a human way of knowing that we've forgotten. But it sort of is like of going into the dark, going into these places, going into the things under the ground, going into the tarot, going into the dreams, and discovering things there and bringing that mystery back is, I don't know what, 6,000 or 8,000 years been extremely dangerous to do. It's not been okay to be a witch. It's not been okay to be a woman who knows. And it's still not, right? Like even
kind of becoming that way again.
Right.
There's inklings of it.
Yeah, it is, which is so terrifying. Like I call it, I'm not the first one, but lots of people call it the witch wound, is like we said what we knew and it wasn't, and it was deadly. It was, and lots of torture and horrible things. And so, I mean, I even see that in the UFO UAP conversation. Like we need to have these, like if we're going to convince the public of something, it has to be rational. It has to be materialist. It has to be through science. And I get that. I really, really do understand the need for all of those things. I'm not trying to get rid of rational materialism. I'm really not. But saying that it's only legitimate if it comes through those avenues is bullshit. And it's another piece of deconditioning that I'm really continuing to work on. And I know we need to reclaim as well, that we do like to be able to trust dreams and visions and hold the complexity around them and understand it's not a one-to-one kind of place. Like that dream is literal in no way. In no way is that dream literal. In no way is the goat biting your hand dream literal. And we understand that. And we understand there's a place for like rationality and a place where we have to be literal. And then there's all of these things that are not that we have cut off from ourselves. And as we're reclaiming them, I am feeling a lot of like, I'm feeling the complexity around the desire for validation and the desire to be validated. And then this other kind of rebellious part of me that's just like, go fuck yourself, because if you haven't walked in those realms, then you don't know how real they are. And then I go, okay, don't go fuck yourself. You just don't know. You just haven't been there, but stop saying that it's not real. I'm pushing back, like I'm fighting against something, which is not a vibe that I usually like very much, but I can feel that I'm just like, I haven't fully validated it in myself yet, even after everything. So yeah, feeling a little that the woo or whatever you want to call it isn't as valid because it doesn't fit into scientific materialism.
Well, it's called, and that, how do you even talk about that in like 5 minutes?
I know, sorry.
No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to myself. Shit. Like I think about how that's why, if anything, the dream world and this world of scarcity and sparsity, I don't know what it is, how they're coming so close together, but then of resistance, like also pushing so far apart. Like there is people who need that rationality but it's how about it's now the time of integrative thinking. And I really mean that, like being able to hold two opposites, two opposing ideas or feelings at one time. Again, that's like developmental theory. That's like when children's prefrontal cortex really starts developing. They have the ability to not freak out all the time, basically. And I guess we can apply that to our own development in the wider world, where there's just the in between now, and to be either or. Some people are, and by every right, where they are, and some people are not anymore. I think has a lot to do with that. And then also there's things that are meant to live in different realms and to be only understood by the body and just knowing. And then there's things that are meant to be assessed and validated and all of that. Like, I don't know, like triage, right? To fix something that's literally broken, or to create a system where all people have like a format that they can follow. Then when it comes to people's beliefs and their inner worlds and their experiences, you can't do that, right? That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it kind of nicely like loops back around to what we started talking about, which is that these places touch something that the collective touches. Like whether we remember our dreams or not, whether it's a part of our lives or not, whether someone looks at the tarot or has visions or trusts that intuition or anything, like anything that's not part of that other world, it exists. It is there, and it is for the collective, and it is for us individually as well. Like that was my dream. That was personal to me. And also it contains themes, that it contains these other things like that that were touched on also in your tarot reading. Like it is the time of integrative thinking. I love that word. I call it, the word that I use for that is paradox. Like, yep, two different things at the same time. It makes me think about what Stuart Davis told me once, which is maybe that's the price of entry to the new world, or to the new way of being, is like being able to hold paradox, being able to not have a yes or no answer, but a both and answer.
And that's why during this conversation, what kept on coming up for me too is, as humans, as far as I know, and who am I but a woman who is being wasted in this small town? Like, look at me. Everybody could just see me.
I know, it's
there.
Totally.
But it's what, Robin, what was I saying before I got sidetracked by my own beauty?
I don't know, but I think it's hilarious because I was like, at the end of this, I wanted to just tell people how beautiful you are, and how if people could just see you and you're covered in all these tattoos and you have the best sense of style. And every time I look at you, I'm inspired to like step into the fullness of my awesomeness more. I really do experience you as like this inspiration into aesthetics. So
hello, hashtag, I mean, that's on my business card. I've now found my calling.
Yeah.
And what do you do?
I inspire people.
Yeah, aesthetics. Look at me. Inspiration. It was really good what I was gonna say too.
Was it about about the liminal, about the cost, it's the price of entry to kind of the new world, to be able to hold paradox, to be able to hold the both and?
Yeah. And then you said Stuart, and then I was like, oh my God, Stuart, why didn't you have Stuart on? I need to like listen again. And then I want to like talk to him.
Yeah.
It'll come back to me, and then just leave a voicemail with something. With all that to say, I mean, I just really think it's just coming back to like simplicity in a very traumatic way. Just the simplicity of like, be alive in the moment, with all those like Zen-y people have been doing for thousands of years or whatever,
all that bullshit spiritual bypassing that we finally got over. And now it's like, oh, actually it is about being in the moment. Yeah. That's kind of been eye-opening. And also, right? Like, and also it was it was really damaging to me before I was ready for it. You can't live in the moment, man, when you're like in a abusive, traumatic relationship or drinking yourself to sleep at night. It's like, doesn't really work to be in the moment, just chill out, be happy. Yeah.
No, and being in the moment is then being present with all the grief and all of it. And then just trying to go like, okay, this is what it's like to be human. So how do I survive this? I mean, I obviously come in and out of this, and it isn't something to attain. It's just something to experience. But I really think it does include, that's why it's like, it includes all the other things around you. I think my tarot teacher had a really good way of explaining the Emperor card, because in some tarot teachings, it's like the masculine, it's like the father, the like fight and being, strong and strength and all that. And her explanation is it's standing in who you are. And she said, like the redwood tree, what does the redwood tree do but be that tree? That's all it knows. It's I am. That's Aries. That's the Emperor. It's just I am. I take as much room as I need because I'm just being you. And I think that's where I think I was going to say something along the lines to it. Why and what the theme that's been coming up when we're talking is like, why humans, prefrontal cortex, like why have we been given this brain that can problem solve, that can weigh these 2 things, 3 things? There's something there, and it doesn't make us better, or probably doesn't make us worse. There's something there. It's living with pain and joy at the same time, and all of it, and still showing up.
The capacity to be with the mystery. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. And still have jelly bellies and get dreams.
Still have dreams where I smoke. I don't smoke anymore, but I still dream about it. I dream of being a 100-year-old woman sitting out on my porch wearing cowboy boots, smoking hand-rolled ciggies with you.
Yeah. Yes. I think when I'm 70, hopefully all my hormonal shit and everything is like, I am going to drink scotch, and hopefully it won't make me feel like shit.
Right.
I am going to, that's the one thing after my mom's aneurysm. I saw this person who didn't have the stress of 3 kids, single artist, pumping out those paintings, and somebody who sat in a wheelchair but watched TV, ate all the foods she refused to eat before because somehow they were gonna give her a stroke, and just being her, it was chill. So we're gonna do all the things that are supposedly awful, which really bring a lot of joy when you've been through all the shit. And then you go back to those things and go, I'm not using them for anything but pleasure.
Oh my God.
Imagine.
I am. And it sounds fucking fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. It's a date. We're going to do that.
Sounds great. Invite Stuart just for half an hour.
Okay.
So funny.
All right, my love. Thank you so much for this. Thanks for taking the time and saying all the things. And you don't know this yet. You're a recurring guest on the podcast, so get ready.
Did you call me a recurring problem?
No, I said a recurring guest.
Chronic? Can you call me a chronic guest?
You're a chronic guest.
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much to my dear friend Samantha Brooks for her time and her humor and wisdom today. And thanks to Morgan Jenks, as always, for our beautiful musical soundscapes. If you would like to support my work, please consider joining Patreon at patreon.com/Robin Lassiter. Or to book a one-on-one session with me, please visit honeyheart.org.